Um, and the reason it's busy is because trade shows are back. There's no chance anymore of anything being canceled, it doesn't seem like. And I'm wondering, now trade shows are back. Are in-person meetings with the press at the booth and in the press room back? Are those back, or is that something that you're working a lot on right now, setting those up?
Well, first of all, Bob, thank you for inviting me back and hosting this event. I think it's very relevant. As you said, we're all going into this major trade show. And yes, trade shows are back 100% for sure. We've all been through the pandemic, and the last few years were challenging, and people have been starved of that in-person contact and the in-person conversations. So last year when we were at NAB and also at IBC, there was a genuine interest to meet with people, to talk to them in person, to see demos at the booth in person. There's really no substitute to that. And but still, there was some amount of apprehension as to how is this all going to turn out? What if the shows get canceled at the last minute? But that did not happen. So people who were even slightly hesitant about going back to trade shows last year are confident this year that it's really happening. So there's a lot of excitement and interest in going back to in-person trade shows. And same for the press. I think they're really eager to go back, meet with the companies like we did pre-pandemic, and learn about the new products that they're bringing to the show, to the industry. So yes, there is a lot of interest.
So what do you say to clients who say, I've only got a limited number of resources to bring to the show, and my goal is really to meet with customers. I just don't have time for meetings with the press. Is it really worthwhile?
People have constraints, companies have constraints. Sometimes it's related to, time, at times it's related to resources. But something that, and if you are going to a trade show, there's some amount of work that needs to be put in. And my advice would be to plan ahead. And even if you're strapped for time and at the show, on the show floor, you can always do things in advance. To give you an example, press briefings, for example, it's totally doable, online on Zoom. It might not be, as effective as actually showing a demo in person to an editor, but it's still something. And other than that, you can always launch your press releases ahead of the show. You don't have to wait until the last minute. You can also do an editorial, either thought leadership or a brand recall campaign leading up to the show. And that would generate buzz and excitement about the news and the products that you're bringing to the show. In addition, I think there are a lot of awards that happen before the show, and they're actually awarded at the show. So even if you don't have time to devote to PR activities, on the show floor, you can always apply for those awards in advance and then reap the benefits on the show floor, because you're going to be given the award on the show floor, and that creates excitement and buzz. Other than that, if you are really interested to meet with the press, but you might have constraints related to a spokesperson who probably doesn't have enough time to speak with the press in person, or like one-on-one, or are tied up in customer meetings. One easy and quick way is to invite the press to a booth event that you might be hosting anyway. Say you're doing a little cocktail event with your partners and with your customers. Just go ahead and invite the press. They can just come. You can have like an informal chat right then and there, and it's all about relationship building. So there are various avenues to address that.
I wanted to come back to something you were talking about before, which is doing meetings before the show. And a lot of companies, they wait for NAB, and that's where they want to launch a new product, and they're concerned about talking about it at all with the press before NAB happens. So is putting an embargo on a press release, is that still a thing? Do people do that? And does that work?
Only all the time, because most companies are actually working on finishing up their new products or their new feature updates, right up until the show. And also bear in mind that partner deals and customer deals are often, solidified right before the show, or even on the show floor. So there are a lot of uncertainties around the new product, the feature, the deal going up until the show. But as you said, embargoed press releases are an excellent vehicle to make sure that you're reaching out to the press still and giving them the information. However, there are a few things that you need to be mindful of. First of all, the document needs to be formatted correctly. There are protocols around an embargoed piece of news. It depends on when you're going to release the news. Everybody, all parties involved, they need to understand the exact date and time so there's no misunderstandings. And that's something, a good PR manager can definitely handle for you. But yes, embargoes are excellent way to give the editors the information in advance, and it helps them to write the story and be prepared. And as soon as you launch the product, they can release the story and you get immediate buzz.
Okay. What about, I think sometimes people feel like they're going to get into a meeting with an editor and be faced with a lot of hardball questions, and not be able to think on their feet fast enough. And how do you counsel people like that just have a little bit of anxiety about being live with an editor?
Yeah, there are a lot of them, and it's natural, but I think the advice that I usually give to my clients is that preparation is key. So if you anticipate meeting with an editor is not going to be as smooth, we usually speak with the client in advance. We set up a meeting to go over their whatever their fears and anxieties are. And usually it's around, as you said, if they ask me a question, this question, how am I going to respond to that? So, it's very easy. Just write out the questions, prepare in advance, put together your talking points. And, that's one way of preparing. And then during the meeting, while you are in conversation with the editor, you get a really hard question and you don't know how to address that. My advice would be to still be positive and, put up a brave front. And at times you might not have all the information, and it's absolutely okay to let the editor know that, can I get back to you with more information, or can I cross-check with my subject matter expert and get back to you with the right answer. And this is the funny bit. If everything fails, and if you get really hard financial questions that you don't even want to answer, blame it on your PR person. Just tell them, Netra here will not let me answer that question, so I'm sorry. And that's okay.
Do people still do press kits?
Yes, absolutely, but more online than flash drives, or paper is almost like a no-no. We are all moving towards a more green world. So yeah, but we do online press kits for all our clients going to shows.
What's the difference in sometimes, like, editors show up, or you have a press meeting and an editor shows up with a publisher, and what's the difference between how you talk with a publisher and how you talk with an editor?
Yeah, I think the expectations from the two sets of meetings are slightly different. When you have an editorial meeting, it's mostly about giving the news, or talking about a trend or talking about your company, and that interview generally ends up into coverage like right then and there. However, when you're meeting with a publisher, I think the come is slightly different. It's still beneficial. You might not get coverage right away, but then the publisher is able to give you more information about the whole product suite that they offer. They might be able to talk to you about events or conferences that the publishing group is putting together, or connect to you to other editors that you might not even know of. So that's really helpful. So we meet with publishers and editors, actually. Yeah, that's actually a great point, Bob.
Yeah, because that's how it often turns out, because they go around in pairs.
Exactly. Yes.
What do you, sometimes I meet people who just aren't totally convinced of the value of any of it, of meeting with the press, or, engaging with the media around their own products, line of the trade press. What do you say to somebody like that, to just, point out, or what would you say? How would you explain the value of it to them?
Right. I think PR is a critical business function. It truly is. It works hand in hand with your goals and objectives, because through PR, you're reaching your target audience, and you have to see the press as your vehicles to reach your target audience. Ultimately, as a business, you want to sell, right? So the press they are one more vehicle for you to reach your desired buyer. So once you realize that, I think it's easy to understand that press are extremely important in the entire workflow and in the business cycle. But even then, if there are apprehensions, I would say that encourage your CEO or your CTO to have even one or two press meetings and show them the value of it. Just it's like telling them, see, you met with the press, you talked about this, look at this coverage, look at how many people actually read this article. And, making that connection at times helps to ease them into understanding the value of it. The other thing is that good editors are often great sounding boards. So when you are in conversation with an editor and you're running past, your features, or talking about an upcoming trend and how your product relates to that, they can give you incredible feedback, because they have been speaking with your competitors, with the industry, with associated technologies, and that feedback is invaluable. Fortunately, most of our clients see that value, and that is why they're, not just interested, but eager and enthusiastic to meet with the press. So.
That's actually a really great point. I've always, found that sometimes clients say things to editors that they've forgotten to say to me. And so I've gotten in the habit of recording, when we're on Zoom together, recording all those conversations and taking very careful notes when I'm doing it in person, because that's something I can turn into content later on. Do editors have a preference between, sometimes it seems, they really like to talk to the CEO. Is it, is it a preference to get them to somebody as high up in the C-suite as possible when talking to them?
Not really. No, not really. I think as a PR manager, our role is to connect the right editor to the right expert within the company. So there's some amount of analysis and preparation required for that, because if you're connecting, say, a journalist who's covering, just trade show news to the CEO of the company, it's not a great match, because the two of them need to talk to each other, and the conversation needs to flow, and for the two of them, the expectations would be different. While the CEO might be interested in speaking about trends and the business aspect and where the company is growing or going ahead in the next quarter or two, the tech journalist might only be interested in understanding more about the new product launch. So it's not a great meeting in that case. However, if you connect with the journalist to say a senior product manager who can give them the exact details that they're looking for, that's a successful press briefing. So the role of the PR manager is to make that match, is to, who is the right speaker for a journalist that's seeking a meeting.
Do you typically go to these press meetings that you set up for your clients?
Yes, we do. We are actually there to coordinate and moderate the press meeting. I think that's the role of the PR manager. So we are there to take notes. Okay, first to introduce, because at times they might not even know each other. So they need that common bridge. So the PR manager acts as the bridge to introduce the two people. And then be a moderator during the meeting, because at times the question asked by a journalist might translate differently in the minds of the speaker who is taking the interview. And if the PR manager is there, he or she can course correct and bring the conversation back to where it needs to be. And then, of course, follow up. I think we take notes and we write out the follow-ups that need to happen after the show, because we need to bear in mind that any press meeting is a relationship building exercise. So there's a lot to be done even after the briefing is over, not just finding the coverage or the clip that generated from that meeting, but also, following up regularly, making sure that the journalist has the extra information that he or she needs, maybe a photo, maybe a product brochure, maybe, a bio of the speaker. So it's important that the PR person is part of those briefings.
Yeah. I mean, it seems to me like, would you say that, there's as much work that comes after the meeting as before the meeting and during the meeting?
Absolutely, yes. Absolutely, yes.
Well, cool. Thank you, Netra. I think that's a great overview. And if anybody would like to ask a question in the chat, Netra is happy to, I'm happy to pass that on. Oh, actually, here's one. Do you do briefing or like briefing sheets for clients?
We do, yes, absolutely. So before we go to trade shows, once we have a confirmed list of the journalists that our clients meeting with, we put together individual briefing sheets where we highlight what the publication is, who the journalist is, provide a short brief of their beat and what they cover. And then we will also indicate relevant questions that the journalist might be asking. So it's all part of that preparation that I was talking about.
Okay. Here's another one. What if we don't have a PR person to be in the meeting? What advice would you give about keeping on topic?
Okay, yeah.
How would that
Yeah.
ever
No, that's true. That's a great question, actually, because what if there is no PR person there? Again, I think preparation is key when you're putting together that briefing document. I think it's important to highlight maybe the top 3 or 5 topics or key messages that you want to get across in that meeting, and then training your speaker. At times, we work with different levels of executives. Sometimes people are very confident and they are very at ease speaking with the press, and then there are others that are not. So depending on where they are in their comfort level, a short or even an extensive media training can be very helpful.
Okay, fantastic. So if anybody has further questions, you can join us in our individual speaker rooms that you'll find by navigating back to, oh, hold on, we have another question. So here's a question. We are due to announce our new product. Can we do pre-launch press release?
A pre-launch press release. So I'm trying to understand the question. So you want a press release that,
You know what? I'd
Hmm.
maybe take that question to the meeting.
Yeah, let's do that.
And ask about it. So to get to the meeting room, you just navigate back to
All
the
right.
live page where you join the meeting from, and just click on speaker zone. So to join Netra, speaker room Netra Ghosh, and or speaker room Bob Decker to speak with me.
I'll share my screen to show what that is. So if you go back to the main page on your browser, we have 2 speaker rooms set up. And if you just click on those, it'll take you to a new Zoom meeting where you can talk to Netra or Bob individually.
Excellent. We'll do that.
Okay,
All
so
right.
thanks again.
Thank you,
everybody.
Bob. Thank you again for inviting me.
We'll see you in the
And
speaker rooms.
thanks everyone for attending.
Okay.